And now our host, Stephen Lee Morris.
State Senate Bill 805, co-authored by Senator Susan Rubio, has successfully made it through the Senate Appropriations and Labor Committees and has passed the Senate on a vote on the Senate floor. The bill is designed to assist theaters of all sizes to be in compliance with Assembly Bill 5, which requires that all the workers in theaters be registered as employees and that they be paid a minimum wage for rehearsals and performances and have access to all other kinds of benefits that are required in state law. The bill is now the Senate Bill 805, which is a relief package to theaters in order to provide funds in order to meet the demands of AB 5, is now working its way through the state assembly, where things have gotten very complicated, to say the least. And here to explain those complications and where things stand are two of the primary advocates for this legislation, Beatrice Casagran and Vanessa Stewart. Beatrice Casagran, welcome to Animal Farm. Vanessa Stewart, welcome back to Animal Farm.
Thanks, Steve.
The last time we spoke, that I spoke with Vanessa, you were on the verge of doing a victory dance because the bill was shortly after our conversation. It had already made it through labor. It then made it through appropriations. This is on the Senate side, the California Senate side. And then it went to the floor and it was overwhelmingly approved by margins that exceeded your expectation. Okay, that's part one. That's chapter one. Then it moves to chapter two, which when it rolls across to the state assembly. Right. The author of the bill in the Senate, the primary author is Senator Susan Rubio. And upon the passage of the bill, Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, who is responsible for authoring Assembly Bill 5, came in with her own ask of $50 million. And that's where we kind of left it. And there were some concerns. Is this going to undermine Senate Bill 805? What's going on here? So what has happened since it has passed the Senate and now it has moved into the turf of the state assembly?
Well, Steve, there's a couple things happening at the same time. And this has all been a learning process for us. But the bill is continuing. However, at the same time, there's this budget process. Right. And I think that Assemblymember Gonzalez heard what we were advocating for, which is that we needed money to comply with AB 5. And so she made an ask for money that would provide immediate funding because there was some concern that that the bill that we introduced, SB 805, is going to take a little bit longer. And it is, in fact, a longer term approach. And
this is because it involves a paymaster. It involves installing all kinds of bureaucratic processes, just to clarify. Yeah.
It's meant to set up a pipeline to help build sustainability and help companies build infrastructure to the point that they can then comply on their own with AB 5. Yeah. So she proposed this budget ask, and Senator Rubio and the coalition and talks with labor agreed that, we do need some upfront money to keep companies afloat. While all this process is going on. So in the budget process, Senator Rubio introduced a $50 million ask. And since when that happens in the budget process and there's an ask from both the Senate and the Assembly, it really facilitates things. So the legislature jointly approved an allocation in the budget of $50 million to help small companies comply with AB 5.
I just want to clarify something. You mentioned just now that Senator Rubio asked for the $50 million ask. Is that accurate, or did you mean Senator?
No, it is accurate.
No, they both did it.
They both did it.
Yes, Senator.
And the idea was. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you go ahead, Vanessa.
So hard. Like the Lorena Gonzalez ask, from what I understand, was for larger theaters that were already compliant with AB 5. The Susan Rubio ask was for $50 million to happen right away for theaters across the board. Both were immediate funding asks.
Immediate funding asks that are distinct from SB 805, or was one of them or either of them part of SB 805?
They're not technically part of SB 805. So again, it's very weird, and this is all new, but this budgeting process is different than the bill passage. So technically, SB 805 still is going to need to be funded. So that's going forward. But there's a couple different ways to skin a cat, right?
Yeah.
So SB 805, the bill can go forward and pass and be funded. But another way to approach the same thing is that some of this money that is for AB5 compliance can be implemented, that budget request, when you actually start spending the money, you can put in the mechanisms of SB 805 and make sure that small companies below 1.4 million can use that to pay people and for compliance and paymaster and all that.
Good. Okay, question. The original ask was for something like $150 million. The SB 805.
250 million.
Excuse me. Oh, I was just off by $100 million.
100 million.
Yeah.
And that was going to be part of
easy go.
The larger $1 billion ask. We were going to be part of that larger
part
ask.
of the California Arts Council request. And so now that ask, I heard, came down to $70 million on the theory that it would be easier to pass if it were a one-year appropriation of $70 million as opposed to a three-year appropriation of I guess, $250 million. What does that now $70 million figure have to do with either of the $70 million? What are the sources of all of these funding, and do they compete with each other?
We are just hoping, because obviously if SB 805 doesn't have any money in it at all, it's dead on arrival, so we need something in it, hoping that if we can just keep alive, then on the other side, they have a thing that I'm learning about called a trailer bill, where we can ask for the money later to help us fully realize the needs of all these smaller theaters and do the subsidies that we had been wanting to do all along. Yeah.
It's all, like I said, all the different ways to peel a grape, right? We're trying, and it's part of the negotiation process. So yes, the 50 million can go fund SB 805. What this means, we didn't get 250 million, which quite honestly, it would have been unheard of. It would have been amazing, but reality has sunk in.
We thought this was our year.
This is it. They have so much money, and we've been told there's still a lot of opportunities ongoing to get more funding in the bill. What this means is that we've bought ourselves a lot of work, right? We're going to continue. The coalition needs to continue to ask for funding for this bill, to ask for funding at least for the mechanisms that are in the bill until we get enough funding. And so this is going to be a long and continuing process.
So as SB 805 goes through the legislation, through the assembly, is there any money attached to it? Or is Senator Rubio's $50 million ask what's going into that bill for the time being?
We don't have money yet.
We don't have money attached to it right now.
Okay.
We are either asking attach money to it, at least
from
some,
the 50 million,
or create a trailer bill that basically takes the mechanisms of SB 805 and attaches it to that funding.
Got it. Yeah, I see. You're building the car while you're driving it.
Yes. That's a great metaphor.
That is the good metaphor.
Or the airplane. That's the metaphor.
The airplane while you're flying. Yeah.
You're flying the airplane.
We're going to be fine, you guys. It's fine.
It's good. It's all good.
Installing the jet engines. Has anyone got a wrench? Yeah, exactly.
Don't look down.
Well, that's Denver. That's Denver, right below us. Oh, yeah.
What we're trying to do in the grassroots campaign, that we're trying to educate people as we are flying the broken plane. Because we think the more support we get, and we are building support from unions and from other celebrities, and as we add the pressure, then it will become more and more necessary for them to suddenly wake up and go, oh, holy cow, we can't let this plane crash. We need to make sure that it makes it to the landing way, to continue your metaphor.
It's very much an education process because they're looking at things from 100,000 feet, 30,000 feet, whatever it is, and we need to get them to see the actual effects. So that 50 million sounds like a lot, and we're grateful, but they need to understand exactly what that means to the people, the stakeholders on the ground.
Oh yeah, Beatrice has got some great data, which she was sharing with me today, like about the percentage of companies in the state. Give us some data about how it affects.
Yeah, we wanted to figure out that 1.4 million. What does that mean? And research data shows that 1.4 million, those companies, 1.4 million and under, actually comprise 90% of nonprofit performing arts companies in California. So it's something like 1,900 something are under 1.4 and 153 are above. So when you then factor in companies that aren't actually 501c3s but usually work under fiscal sponsors, a majority of whom are BIPOC companies, that's actually nudging that percentage up. So you're talking about 90 something percent of the sector versus less than 10% of the sector. And all we want now is to educate the legislature to do equity and to allot that funding in a way that is commensurate with the reality.
So is it a fair characterization to say that the Assembly ask from Assemblywoman Gonzalez is really intended to prioritize theaters that have already been in compliance with AB5. And therefore, that would suggest they already are in a pretty good position, versus Senator Gonzalez's ask, which is to help subsidize the theaters that have not been in compliance, been unable to be in compliance for financial reasons. And so the question is, can both of these bills be signed by the governor? These asks, I shouldn't say bills, these requests.
I think we're moving in that direction because of this. We've had some very, very, I think, positive conversations with labor about the idea that all of us aspire to be able to comply and pay people as much as possible. We are artists. It's not us versus them. And if you're over 1.4 million, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to comply with AB5. So, we've moved away. I think there's a positive movement away from kind of a punitive approach to this, to an incentivizing approach, an approach of building scaffolding growth. And I think that is positive. So if you change that view, right, then I think that helps everybody, because yes, you can support the smaller equity companies, the smaller union houses that still need some help, but you really put it where it will do the best, the most benefit, which is helping the companies that haven't been able to do this, that will die, that will cease to exist. And that way more artists get employed and the whole system is grown, right?
Well, I think the good news is that labor really is starting to see, and I say this with gratitude, that a lot of the newer artists, they need a jumping off point. We can't just go from $0 to $1.4 million. Where does their labor train? Where do they go to get their start? And they're really starting to understand that there needs to be like this jumping off spot, this middle ground, in order to grow. And so we've been having that conversation for a few months, and with their support, we think that we can do this.
Vanessa, who is labor? I know it starts with Actors Equity Association.
Yeah, so everybody that falls under the CalFed umbrella, Actors Equity, STC, okay. Even AFM supports us. We have some people from IAT, SE.
IATSE, yeah.
They don't like to be called IATSE anymore, so we're trying to be correct.
So they're starting to understand, which I'm very happy about.
Well, that's encouraging. And then, I'm asking you to be mind readers, and it's terribly unfair, but is there a fair amount of confidence that should there be support for both of these asks, which will total $100 million, would Governor Newsom sign
So let me just clarify. It's not 100 million, it's 50 million. It's that both the Assembly asked for 50 and the Senate asked for 50, and so since they were coming from both houses, that got combined into a joint ask for 50 million.
Yeah. So that has to be reconciled.
We are grateful for that. We are grateful to both senators, and so that's a start.
Yeah, and the question is, how is that $50 million going to be prioritized if it is approved?
That's the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're trying to reach the governor with our message that the equitable thing to do is to fund the 90% of companies who most need it, and at the same time continue talking about SB 805 as the mechanism, because that's what the bill aims to do. Going forward on different tracks.
Final question: what's the timeline on decision making in terms of this $50 million ask and how it gets reconciled, and then perhaps a subsequent or simultaneous vote on SB 805?
You won't get a vote on SB 805 if we don't get funding. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been told that's not 100% true. Again, every time we say this, but and they're like, no, not quite.
Welcome to Sacramento. Yes.
Right. So yes, I mean the $50 million again is a budget request, not a bill.
Right.
And the budget in the legislature has to be approved by the 15th of June, or they stop getting paid until they do that. So we expect that the budget will be approved in the legislature the 15th, and then I believe June 30th is the deadline for all of it to pass, because they have to then go to reconciliation
Yes.
with the governors.
Yes. No, I get it. Right.
Yes. Right. At the same time, the track for the bill could be as late as like September.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things are going together.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Beatrice Casagran and Vanessa Stewart, thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Next week, we're joined by the co-founder and artistic director of Zombie Joe's Underground in North Hollywood, Jordan Cole, otherwise known as Zombie Joe.